Nayla was 7 months pregnant, but still woke up early every morning to run her little bakery in Makoro village. She kneaded dough with swollen feet and a growing belly, smiling at every customer, even when her back ached. People in the village often said she glowed, not just because of pregnancy, but because she was full of warmth, kindness, and quiet strength. One Saturday evening, her family gathered for a celebration. There was music, food, laughter. Everyone sat around the fire, sharing stories and jokes. That's when Tebogo, her husband, stood up to say something. With a grin, he looked at Nayla and said, "You're lucky I love you, even though you've gotten so ugly." At first, there was laughter. A few chuckled, maybe thinking it was just a joke. But the silence that followed said what no one else could. Nayla's smile froze. She laughed softly, trying to brush it off, but inside, something cracked. Her heart sank. She looked around the circle. No one spoke up for her. No one said, "That's not okay." Not even her own sister or his mother. The fire flickered in front of her, but inside she felt cold. She had carried his child, supported his dreams, and still baked bread with love every day. And yet, in that moment, he chose to make her the punchline. She didn't cry. Not then. But that night, in the quiet, her tears came. Not loud, just enough to feel the weight of being unseen. That night, when everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Nayla stood in front of the mirror. She lifted her shirt slowly and looked at her belly. The stretch marks spread across her skin like lightning scars, proof of the life growing inside her. But instead of feeling proud, she felt small. She ran her fingers over them gently, remembering how her body used to be. How she used to walk on runways, wear designer dresses, smile for cameras. Back then, people called her beautiful. She felt beautiful, confident, alive. But she gave it all up. Modeling, traveling, the magazine shoots. She left it behind for Tebogo. He wanted to start a business, and they agreed to settle down. She said goodbye to the spotlight and moved back to Makoro village to support his dream. She opened a bakery to help with the bills. She never complained. She believed love was about sacrifice. She thought he saw her heart. But now, all she could hear in her head was his voice calling her ugly. Her chest tightened as she sat on the bed. She expected maybe a message from someone, her sister, a cousin, a friend. But no one said anything. Not even his mother, who sat right there when it happened. Earlier that evening, when Nayla tried to speak to her privately, her mother-in-law just shrugged and said, "You brought this on yourself. Men don't like women who let themselves go." Those words hit harder than Tebogo's joke. She curled up on the bed, pulling a pillow close to her chest. Her baby kicked gently inside her. That was the only thing that reminded her she wasn't alone. But still, she felt invisible, unappreciated, ugly, not because she believed it, but because the people she loved acted like it was true. Tears rolled down her face, quiet and hot. All she ever did was love deeply, give fully. And in return, she was mocked, ignored, blamed. Her reflection in the mirror didn't look weak, but inside, something in her had broken. She wiped her eyes. The pain was heavy, but something else started to stir. A quiet voice inside that said, "This is not the end." The next morning, Nayla didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even bring it up with Tebogo. He acted like nothing happened, like his joke had just disappeared into the air. But Nayla remembered every word. It stayed with her like a bruise no one could see. After he left for work, she sat alone in the kitchen, the smell of baked bread still hanging in the air. Her hands moved out of habit, cleaning, folding, wiping, but her mind was somewhere else. She looked at the small cupboard above the fridge. That's where she kept things no one ever touched. She stood on her toes, pulled it open, and brought down an old leather journal. It was dusty, but inside it was full of dreams. Pages and pages of recipes, logo sketches, ideas for a cooking brand she once dreamed of starting. Before marriage, before pregnancy, before life got in the way. She flipped through it slowly, touching each page like it was a part of her that had been sleeping. "If he sees me as less now," she whispered to herself, "he'll see me rise next." That night, while Tebogo watched TV in the living room, Nayla sat at the dining table with her journal, her laptop, and a quiet fire in her heart. She rewrote her business pitch. She created a logo. She looked up how to register a business online. Every click felt like a small rebellion, a quiet step back to herself. By midnight, she had done it. She had officially registered her brand, Mama Fire Meals, a name that honored her warmth, her cooking, and the fire she still carried inside. No one knew. Not her husband. Not even her closest friends. This was hers, a secret seed planted in silence. She closed her laptop and rested her hand on her belly. "You're going to see your mama shine," she whispered to her unborn child. It wasn't just about business. It was about taking her power back, piece by piece. She wasn't waiting for someone to make her feel valuable again. She was building it on her own, quietly, strongly. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone laugh it away. Nayla didn't have fancy cameras or a big kitchen studio. All she had was her small phone, a ring light she ordered quietly online, and the same kitchen where she baked bread every morning. But what she did have, more than anything, was heart, and she was finally ready to share it. One quiet afternoon, while Tebogo was out, she set up her phone on a stool, tied a bright scarf around her head, and pressed record. She started simple, making plantain stew the way her grandmother used to. As she stirred the pot, she told funny little stories, added tips she'd learned from her bakery, and laughed at her own jokes. Her voice was soft but sure. She looked straight into the camera like she was talking to an old friend. Then she uploaded it. No hashtags, no expectations, just her and her food. To her surprise, the video started getting views, then comments, then shares. People loved her vibe. "You remind me of home," one woman wrote from Nairobi. "You cook like my mother," another said from Libreville. Some asked for more recipes. Some just wanted to say thank you. One comment read, "You made me smile today, Mama Fire." That name made her eyes water. Week after week, she kept going. One video became 10. Her followers grew. Slowly, then suddenly, people across Gabon, Kenya, and even as far as the UK began tuning in to her calm, joyful cooking. It wasn't just her recipes, it was her presence. She made people feel warm, like they belonged in her kitchen. She still baked bread in the mornings, still carried the weight of late pregnancy, but now she also carried purpose. Every view, every like, every message was a little reminder that she was more than what someone once said about her. The same woman her husband had dismissed with a joke was now building something real, something loved. Tebogo didn't say much. He noticed she was on her phone more, recording, editing, smiling at messages. He didn't ask why. Maybe he thought it was just a hobby. But Nayla didn't correct him. She didn't need his permission. Because while he was busy looking past her, the world was starting to look right at her. And they loved what they saw. A few months later, Nayla got an email that made her hands shake. A national TV show, Flavors of Us, wanted her to appear as a guest. They had seen her cooking videos and loved not just her food, but her story. They wanted her to cook live on air and talk about her journey. At first, she thought it was a prank, but the email was real. The producers even called her. "We love what you're doing. You inspire so many," woman said. Nayla stared at her phone long after the call ended. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her dream, once tucked away in an old journal, was now calling her into the spotlight again. This time, not as a model, but as a woman who had built something with her own hands and heart. The day of the show arrived. She wore a bright orange dress that hugged her very pregnant belly, and a beautiful head wrap that made her feel like royalty. The studio lights were hot, but she didn't sweat. She smiled, calm and glowing. Her hands moved confidently as she prepared her famous cassava fish roll. The host laughed with her, asked about her bakery, her baby, her journey. But what Nayla didn't know was that the team had prepared a surprise. As she plated the dish, the host said, "Before we taste your food, we want to show you something." The studio lights dimmed, and a screen lit up behind her. A tribute video began to play. Clips of her early vlog, comments from fans across Africa, photos of her bakery, her journal, her glowing belly in the kitchen. Then a few video messages from women who said her story gave them courage to chase their dream. One woman said, "Because of Nayla, I opened my first food stall." Another said, "She made me feel proud of my stretch mark." When the video ended, the whole studio stood up. Applause filled the room. Loud, long, real. Nayla's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't used to being seen like this, not pitted, not laughed at, but celebrated. She looked around slowly, hand resting on her belly, and whispered to herself, This is what I was made for." That day, the applause was louder than the insult, and it echoed in her heart like a promise that she would never be small again. Tebogo sat on the couch, flipping through TV channels without much interest. Then he paused. There she was, Nayla, on national TV, smiling, glowing, very pregnant, and confidently stirring something delicious in a big pot. The title on the screen read, "Meet Mama Fire, the Heart of African Cooking." At first, he leaned back with a smirk. "Look at her," he muttered to himself, "doing her little videos on TV now." But then the segment kept going. The host was laughing with her, calling her an inspiration to women across Africa. Then came the tribute video. Messages from fans, women crying, thanking Nayla for giving them courage. The audience stood up. A standing ovation. Tebogo sat up straight, now holding the remote tightly. Something about the moment made his chest heavy. Then his phone buzzed, and kept buzzing. First, a message from a friend. "Bro, isn't that your wife on TV?" Then another. "You really called her ugly? Look at her now." Then came the tweets. Someone had posted a short clip from the show with a caption. Her husband once called her ugly while she was pregnant. She turned the insult into an empire. Underneath, people were furious. "Men like him don't deserve women like her." Imagine insulting a queen and watching her rise without you. His name wasn't mentioned, but people started connecting the dots. Old friends, neighbors, even cousins who barely talked to him were reposting the clip with fire emojis and praise for Nayla. Tobogo stared at the screen, phone in one hand, remote in the other. It hit him all at once. He was no longer the center of her story. In fact, he wasn't even part of it. The woman he once joked about was now being loved by a whole continent. And she didn't need him to get there. He had been so sure that she'd always be just the woman in the kitchen, the one behind him. But now the world had flipped. She was leading. She was shining. And he was just the man who once made her cry. For the first time, Tobogo felt what Nayla had felt that night, invisible. When Nayla came home from the TV show, the house was quiet. The air felt different, like something had shifted, even though everything looked the same. She placed her bag down gently, her trophy still wrapped in her scarf, and walked into the living room. Tobogo was standing there, awkwardly, as if he'd been rehearsing what to say. He gave a small smile and opened his arms for a hug. "You did well," he said. "I'm proud of you." But Nayla didn't move. She looked at him, tired but calm, and said softly, "Respect doesn't come after applause. It should have been there before." Tobogo's face dropped. He stepped back, not saying anything right away. Maybe he thought success would make her forget. Maybe he thought the cheers on TV had somehow erased the sting of being mocked in front of family, of crying alone while carrying his child. But it hadn't. Nayla wasn't angry. She wasn't here to argue or yell. She was just done shrinking herself to make someone else feel tall. The woman who once laughed off insults now stood with her shoulders high, her voice steady. "I didn't need the world to clap for me," she said. "I needed my husband to believe in me when no one was watching." Tobogo looked at the floor. He had no answer. The silence between them wasn't sharp. It was just real. And for the first time, Nayla wasn't afraid of it. She walked past him, into the nursery, and sat on the edge of the bed, hand on her belly. Her baby kicked gently, as if to remind her she was never really alone. She had grown through pain, through silence, through forgotten dreams. And now she stood tall, not out of revenge, but out of love for herself. She didn't wish him harm. She didn't need him to suffer. She just needed space to keep growing. Nayla had found her voice. And this time, she wasn't letting it go quiet again. With her rising fame and growing support from fans around the world, Nayla knew she wanted to do more than just cook in front of a camera. She wanted to create something that would last, something that could help other women the way she had helped herself. So she took the earnings from her online brand, added a little savings from the bakery, and opened the doors to her biggest dream yet, a women's center. She called it Beauty in Bumps. The name made people pause. Some smiled, some even cried when they heard it. It was bold, honest, and full of love. It came from the very place where her pain had started, her pregnant body, her stretch marks, the comments that once tried to crush her. But instead of hiding it, Nayla turned it into her brand, her power, her message to the world. You are beautiful, even in your becoming. The center sat in the heart of Makoro village, painted in bright colors with murals of smiling women cooking, holding babies, and running their own businesses. Inside, it was always full of life. Pots bubbling, voices laughing, knives chopping vegetables, notebooks open on tables. Nayla taught basic cooking, recipe development, how to price and sell food, how to turn passion into profit. Many of these women had never held a smartphone or believed they could earn their own income. Now they were creating spice blends, catering small events, and dreaming of owning food trucks. Mothers brought their babies to class. Young girls came after school to learn. Some women came just to sit and listen, to heal, to feel seen. Everyone was welcome. No one was judged. When asked why she started it, Nayla would smile and say, "Because I know what it feels like to be told you're not enough. But I also know what happens when a woman starts to believe in herself." The very body her husband once mocked became the face of a movement. Her belly wasn't just a bump. It was the beginning of a whole new world for hundreds of women. Nayla didn't just flip the table. She built a bigger one. And this time, every seat was for women like her. Months after giving birth, Nayla stood backstage at one of the biggest award shows in the country. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with quiet pride. Her baby was in her arms, wrapped in a soft yellow blanket. Her name had been announced as a nominee for Entrepreneur of the Year, but deep down, she already felt like she had won, just by being there. She had built something out of pain, out of silence, out of stretch marks and soft cries in the night. She had taught women, fed villages, and inspired a movement. And now, the world was clapping for her. When her name was finally called as the winner, the room erupted. Loud, joyful, endless applause. People stood up, clapping, cheering, some even wiping tears. Nayla walked onto the stage slowly, her baby still in her arms, her steps steady and sure. Her long dress shimmered under the lights, and her smile was gentle but strong, like someone who had walked through fire and bloomed anyway. She took the trophy in one hand, held the baby in the other, and turned to face the crowd. But as the camera swept across the audience, it paused for a moment on a single empty chair in the front row. The tag on the seat said family. It was reserved for her husband, Tebogo. But he wasn't there. He hadn't been invited. Not out of hate. Not out of spite. Simply because this part of her journey wasn't his anymore. He had stepped out of the story long ago, when he laughed instead of lifted, when he joked instead of stood by her side. Nayla glanced at the empty chair for a second. She didn't frown. She didn't cry. She just smiled, a calm, knowing smile, and turned back to the mic. My son doesn't know it yet, she said softly, but he's the reason I kept going. And to every woman watching, your story doesn't end when someone tries to silence you. It begins. The crowd rose again, louder than before. And as she walked off the stage, holding her baby and her trophy close, Nayla knew she had finally become everything they said she couldn't be, and more. Years later, Nayla's story didn't just live online or in memories, it became something bigger. A documentary was made about her journey. It followed her from the small kitchen in Makoro Village to her award-winning brand, Mama Fire Meals, and her center, Beauty in Bumps. The film was raw, honest, and full of heart. It showed her pain, her growth, her power. Soon, the documentary began showing in girls' schools across West Africa. Young girls watched it in classrooms, eyes wide, notebooks open, some even holding back tears. They saw a woman who was once called ugly, now standing tall, loved, and leading. A woman who turned a hurtful moment into a global message. Nayla visited many of the schools herself. She spoke gently but clearly. Don't let insults define you, she told them. Let your response echo louder. You don't have to scream. Just rise. Her words stuck. Girls began writing down dreams, starting mini food stalls, helping their mothers in new ways. Some even called themselves Little Mama Fires. As for Tebogo, he still lived in Makoro Village. People didn't whisper or blame him anymore. They just moved on. He would sometimes overhear someone talking about Nayla in the market, or see her face on a magazine cover. People would ask him, "Weren't you married to her?" And he would say quietly, "I used to be her husband." That was all he had left, her past. Because Nayla's legacy had grown far beyond him. Her story wasn't about revenge or regret. It was about rising, about loving yourself enough to start over, and about reminding every girl, you are more than what they call you. You are what you choose to become.